Dark Satellite Media.
Yeah. Tap. Queens. Frank Sinatra eating collard greens. Shot Jim Crow, hear the holler screams. No Pablo Esco, powder dreams. Corona with a crown, acknowledge Queens. Watch the body say the prayer to Janaza. Right after midnight, glimmers ride faster. Cemetery with a smile, I'm dead nice. Scratch your head, you don't get it, head lice. Cats in a doggy dog world, fed mice. Swing girls in the period, bled twice. Flows grotesque, arts graphic. Caught in traffic, ratchet left and backless. You promote the killing, scared to entertain death. Reapers doing the two-step to the pain left.
Let me hit record on this thing. Damn, Red River Podcast welcomes the film director with my number 5 movie of 2020, Mr. Adam Randall.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing it. Man, so what's been going on? Where are you at right now? Hometown?
Yeah, I'm back in the UK. So last year I shot a film, a Netflix film that we were shooting in New Orleans, and then we were flying back to LA to finish the film. And as we landed in LA, it's basically when the whole world locked down. So I sat there for about 6 months and then finished the film in LA, and then have come back to the UK where I'm editing.
Okay, so Night Teeth is pretty much wrapped as far as shooting is. So it's just now, like you said, you're just going to edit, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, we were very lucky in a way. We got to finish the film, and it sort of grew bigger, really, rather than getting smaller, despite everything. So now editing, it's a strange, process. I'm editing with my editors in California, so he starts work at 7 a.m. I start work 3 p.m, and we do it all remotely.
Yes. I got a friend that does kind of the same thing. He used to be like a DP, but now he's like in charge of like this production and he's like, everything's Zoom. He's like, it's crazy. He's like, just everything is just Zoom now. Yeah. So listen, I want to get into that movie. I just want to get into like the beginning of how I started talking to you. One day I came across a movie called ICU, which I think premiered on Amazon Prime, right?
Yes, yeah. I think in the US, so it premiered at South by Southwest, and then it had like a small theatrical in the US, like small, like 20 screens or something, 30 screens, and then was on VOD for a little bit, and then it came onto Prime.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, so I watched it, and what I love about watching movies and having a podcast or like I'm pretty active on social media, so like I feel like people sometimes listen to what I have to say. I watched this movie and I fucking loved it so much that I was like, because at first you have Helen Hunt, and I'm thinking like, oh, all right, I don't really know what to make of her as a star. I didn't know what the movie was about, and then I watched it, and it was just such a, we're not going to spoil anything because the whole point of having you on is to kind of get more word of mouth for people to enjoy this movie, to enjoy Level Up, to check out iBoy and your upcoming movie. But yeah, it made my top 5 of last year, and I gotta say it was just such a I can't think of a better twist of any movie since like Scream. It was just such a great movie. How was the screening at South by?
It was amazing, the screening at South by. It was incredible. It's difficult to talk about without giving anything away, but obviously there's a turn halfway through the film. And the most exciting thing, for me, was to be in a room with people and to sort of feel the room as that happened. Because, one of the things that did in the edit, which was make it much more abrupt than it was supposed to be. In the script, that transition was a little easier. There was like certain things that were done. It froze, it went to black, whatever. It did things, but in the edit, it's just like, let's just go for it. Let's just make it so uncomfortable for the viewer, and it just suddenly flips. And I just was so intrigued to know what would happen in the room at that moment. So it was great, and it went down really well. you know, it was just an amazing experience, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like
I thought it was so interesting too, because every character has like a little arc to them. Like nobody was what I thought they were. Like when you think you figure out a film, like it, you know, there's a big twist in it, which obviously we're not talking about, but each character, I ended up thinking completely different about them. You know, than when they first presented, they each had little arcs to them. You know,
and Devin
sure,
Gray.
yeah.
Devin Gray was like a first-time scriptwriter. And man, did he knock it out of the park with this one. And the funny thing about him, so he was in a movie called 13 Sins, which I love. It was a remake of a Taiwanese movie, which when I watched your other movie, Level Up, I got a sense of like, I when I watched Level Up, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me a little bit of like 13 Game of Death. And it just so happened.
Right.
Yeah. Like what a weird, did you ever watch that movie 13 Game of Death?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I will do now.
Oh my God, it's so good. And they like I said, they remade it and he's actually in the movie. So what was it about the script? Like you read it and like you just felt like you're like, I got to direct this, or how did that come about?
Yeah, very, very similar to almost like your reaction to the film in a way, in that like the thing I thought was most interesting was that all of my judgments on the characters were wrong. Everything I thought about everyone was wrong. I was on the wrong team, you know. I like the wrong characters. You know what I mean? Like by the end of it, you're like, oh shit, I just feel terrible about myself just because of my own prejudices that I, you know, made assumptions about people that were completely wrong. So I thought that was just great. And you know, obviously we worked on the script and things changed, but the structure of it and those big reveals were, you know, were wholly Devon's, and they were in the script. And so it was hard not to just think, just to be blown away by it. And the sort of, you know, I always like, you know, blending different genres, and there was just like, there's a couple of awesome movies in it, if you know what I mean, that were both very exciting to do.
Yeah, for sure. And it was the first time I think you shot in the US, right? Question mark?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what was that like?
It was great. I mean, you know, like ultimately, like it's very similar in that, you know, and it was everything I'd done up to that point, including that, was low budget and tough. So there's a similar mentality of, you know, what can you get away with, of hustling, of, you know, of trying to make it look more than it is, you know. Like, you know, same sort of thing. Like everyone was, you know, so passionate and trying so hard and punching above our weight at that point. The fundamental difference I found was that the US is a little stricter. You know, there's unions. Everything's much more unionized. You can't quite get away with what you can get away with in the UK at a low budget. You know, like there's rules, there's things. You know, at 6 o'clock you stop. You know, if you can't just sort of say, let's do an extra 15 minutes, or I'm just going to grab the camera and grab it. You know, there's very strict things in place that took me a little while to get used to. You know, which ultimately are great because they protect everyone. You know,
Yep. And how were the fish and chips in Cleveland?
The first time I went, I think my first night in Cleveland, I ordered like, I don't know what it was, but it was basically this giant plate of fries covered in bacon, covered in cheese, covered in, you know, just like a heart attack. You know,
yeah.
When in Rome, man. When in Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
But
it was great there. You know, one of the things about shooting there, because, you know, I've since shot in, you know, New Orleans and LA, but like the people just were so sort of supportive that we'd be shooting in a street at 3 a.m. and not only did no one complain, but they'd open their houses to us to come and like, but we couldn't really have like proper trailers. We couldn't have any trailers for the actors. So neighbors were opening up their living rooms to be green rooms for our actors. They were making barbecues for us. They were like background. Even their kids were in the background in the rain at 3 a.m. because they wanted to, you know. Yeah, it was amazing.
And I guarantee you, when that movie came out, like the screening, like you could have made a movie about a movie coming to a town. You know what I'm saying? Like, and everyone,
right.
And I love that DIY. Coming from us, we come from a very punk rock DIY background, so we appreciate all that stuff. Speaking of doing so much with little, I love your use of drones, man. Like drones lately, I have friends. You know, like I play in a band, so whenever we do videos, sometimes we use drones, And man, it's such a game changer. Like the videos that people put up on Instagram, you're like, holy shit, this is really great. So especially the beginning of ICU, where it's just the drone usage is fucking amazing, man. So like, how has the drone changed movie making for you?
I mean, I guess like, in terms of scale and in terms of sort of imagination, you're able to do much more. I mean, it was, I guess, you get, if you were lucky, you could have a little helicopter shoot, but even then you can't do half the stuff you can do with the drone. So it changes it. And certainly like, the way I wanted to shoot it, I was able to through that tool. We couldn't afford cranes and, techno cranes and the things we wanted ideally to shoot on, but we were able to use a drone. And the funny thing about with ICU is that the drone operator, he was a guy in Cleveland who shoots sports and weddings, never done a movie. Like, wow. It was that sort of lo-fi. It's just one guy, like now, like with Night Teeth, they turn up and there's like 5 of them, or 6 of them. But, in ICU, it's just this one guy. And as you probably know, shooting on drone is also a pain in the ass. It's like, it's amazing and there's so much you can do, but it's also, it's slow and there's technical issues, because of the wind, because of all the different things you have, mainly because of all the regulations with airports and, you can't just fly anywhere and shoot what you want. Like there's so much figuring out to do beforehand. But then what you can achieve sort of with so little money, is really quite remarkable, I think.
Yeah.
The main thing for me was really like, how can we use that tool in an interesting way, that feels different? Because I think it's very easy just to kind of go crazy with that stuff, but that doesn't necessarily benefit the story.
No, yeah, and I think you did it great, especially the very beginning. I mean, just the beginning of the movie it just sets the table for something, and obviously it's conscious. It's very like some of it was like slow, and then the score. Like I forgot the guy who did the score, but it was just so. It sounded
Will Arcane.
Yeah, it sounded like whales fucking or some shit. Like like through like a distortion pedal. Shout out to Star Wars 4 or 5, I don't remember. But so it just like I love that beginning, man. Did everyone kind of, so when you start shooting, did everyone kind of realize just kind of like how special this script was?
I think a lot of people, really loved it. It's just one of those scripts. I think so in many ways, like the casting process, people were really excited about it. Like, I know it was different because the 2 films I did before then, Level Up and Eyeball, not that I want to disrespect my previous work, but Level Up, was never about a great script, right? It was always just about, for me, it was like I wanted to make a feature. There was a script that I was given that was okay, and I thought, well, what can I do to this to make it fun? I started to imagine, like, what would it be if this was shot in Korea or Tokyo? It would be fucking cool. Why is it not cool in England? How can I make it more like it would be if it was a Japanese film or a Korean film? So I went in with that, but also when we were sharing the script, you could just tell people were like, okay, what's your vision for it? Because I'm not fully sold on the script. And in a way, it was the same with iBoy to some extent, because iBoy, you have to get past a very difficult premise, which is inherently sort of ridiculous. But again, it was like I used to go in and pitch iBoy saying it's better than it sounds. That was my opening gambit, But I see you, I could tell the difference because you don't have to sort of apologize for where you're starting. Wow, it's just like, this is fucking great. That. Yeah. It is. And it's the tough thing about wanting to make films and not necessarily being a writer. I write a bit, but I'm not, Paul Thomas Anderson, I don't, so at some point you've got to sort of figure out, because you're not getting given great scripts because you're nobody, so at some point, I remember when I got the Level Up script, I was going to turn it down, and my agent said, "Are you really in a position to be turning down everything we send you?" And like, it was a nice way of saying, take a fucking film and make, and try and make it good, because and so anyway, it was a long way of saying that I could just tell with ICU the difference, when we gave it to cast.
That's a great point.
Are you credited as writing on Level Up? Well, you got something punched in, right? Like you.
So Level Up was. I mean, the script I got was much sort of grimier, and you know, I basically, as I said, like, you know, I'm a huge fan of Asian cinema, and you know, with a script like Level Up, you know, I still believe it now. Like, if that was, you know, set in Seoul, and like, why would it just be so much better than the British version? You know, that's what the question was. And I think it was like how bonkers that it could be, how colorful it could be, and how humorous it could be. You know, it doesn't, you know, there's something often with British films where it takes itself a bit more seriously. It's a bit sort of nastier, or grimier, you know, or grungier or whatever, you know. So I tried to, you know, kind of rework the story, the script, with that sort of humor in mind, not taking itself so seriously, putting a much more inept character at the center of it, who's just like, you could put Liam Neeson in the center of it and it would be a film we all know, but you put this guy in the center of it, you know, it's just a disaster.
Well, I was going to say, like, you mentioned like British cinema, like, what were some of the influences that made you want to get into filmmaking? Like, what were some of the British filmmakers, even some American filmmakers, that kind of, you know, influenced like a young Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely much more American, which I think is just the case for most of the UK. You know, which is, I think, a really good thing, and it's a bad thing for us. I mean, we share the same language, you know, so we don't have, you know, an industry like you see in Korea or France or Germany, I think, because, you know, as a kid, I was almost like, if the film was British, then it wouldn't be as good than if it was American. You know, I grew up on Spielberg and Zemeckis and all that stuff. You know, it was just so much bigger and more fun. And then, you know, I guess there was a couple of things. I mean, it was when I was a teenager, you know, that was when Tarantino and the Coens and
we're kind of the same age. We're kind of the same age. And to me, like when I first when I first saw like Pulp Fiction, but Reservoir Dogs, I went back and watched. But when I first saw Pulp Fiction, I always love music. That's what I like doing. I'm a musician. But when I first saw Pulp Fiction, I'm like, I want to write scripts. I want to write, like, it just made me, it was such a game changer, because here you get this movie that isn't linear in any way, but by the end, you're like, that was the best movie I've ever seen in my life. And Tarantino was like the film version of like a Nirvana to certain people, where you're just like, I want to do that. Yeah. So
that was that whole
100%.
Early 90s indie explosion, you know, and Kevin Smith doing Clerks. And then there was it kind of broke down. Like, everybody was like, I could do this too, you know? It
was amazing. You know, I saw Pulp Fiction, and again, like, I went back and watched Reservoir Dogs, because I guess, like, I saw Pulp Fiction when I was like 14 or something. And yeah, it just fundamentally, it like shook me up, because I'd never seen anything that changed, that played with structure and narrative in that way.
Yep.
And then I remember going to Blockbusters, and they were selling the scripts, you know, and they were selling the posters and the soundtrack. And so I bought the script and read the script, you know, and that's something that, like, I never would have even considered. And through that, and through Goodfellas, I guess, and through that kind of gangster genre, just, you know, Scorsese, and then you just naturally start to go, you know, you watch The Godfather, and then suddenly you're aware of 70s cinema. And I think that was the most profound change, was, you know, watching those filmmakers, watching, you know, The Conversation and Chinatown, and then Apocalypse Now, particularly Apocalypse Now, was when I fully understood what a filmmaker could do, just in terms of like looking at a shot and seeing Robert Duvall talking to, you know, doing this amazing monologue, and behind him, thousands of prisoners being marched across, helicopters in the air, just the level of detail, and realizing that someone or a group of people put that together. And then I saw Cuckoo's Nest, and it had such a sort of profound impact that I didn't know what it was, because I was a musician at that point, and that's all I wanted to do.
Cool.
But I went and I watched Cuckoo's Nest like 3 times over 2 days. Then I went and bought the book. Then I remember, like, I bought like a Jack Nicholson biography. So I just couldn't figure out. I just wanted to get closer to this film. And then it was like reading this biography, realizing I don't know why I'm reading this biography. That's got nothing to do with what I want to do is make this. And it was just that moment of like, that was it. I was in a band, and I remember the next day calling, you know, my 3 best mates who were in the band with, going, I'm done. Like, I just want to make films now. And that was it.
That's great. What did you think of Ratched?
I haven't seen it.
Okay, yeah,
What do you guys think of it? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the episodes, and it's like I love the color use, which is why I was bringing it up, because I think Level Up has a really cool color scheme. I don't know if it was purpose, but I just I remember watching the beginning of Level Up, the apartment, like just everything about it, the church's poster, which was pretty cool. So it just I feel like that movie, because I remember we had a conversation and I was telling you how much I loved ICU. And then I was like, oh, you have another movie. And I was like, Level Up. And then you explained it to me. And when I watched it, I was like, this movie's fucking awesome. It's like, I think it's trying to be a video game in a way, which I would imagine, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, for sure. It's like loads of, Level Up in particular is like, I played a lot of video games, still do. There was all the influence from, I guess, British kind of comedy as well. That's
Benny Hill, man. Benny Hill.
A little bit. There is that Benny Hill, on the moped. There's obviously a bit of the kind of space, Shaun of the Dead kind of vibe to it, that kind of stoner, UK thing. But Level Up, the colours is absolutely right. And again, that's sort of like, I just love colourful cinematography anyway. But that was sort of thinking about again like the kind of Asian cinema, of this kind of film, because it so could have been a Japanese film or a Korean film, and the UK often is very, very grey just inherently, because there's a lot of grey buildings and the sky's always grey, and it's like, how do we make it feel more colourful? How do we make it feel more visually interesting? So that was the challenge of that one.
And in iBoy, you have, speaking of someone very influenced by Asian cinema, I think, you have Bill Milner, who is in Apostle, which was directed and written by Gareth Evans, who, Gareth, guy made The Raid 1 and 2, which are arguably the two greatest action movies of all time. And recently, Gangs of London, which was fucking amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And and another director, Corin Hardy, he did that. Yeah, again, that's incredibly cinematic, and I remember sitting in the Raid and just holy fuck. And it came out the same time as Dread. Do you remember? And they were so similar in a way.
Yep.
And both brilliant. Like in a way, like I feel like the Raid almost took away from Dread, but you watch Dread now and you're like, shit, that's what a great film that was as well.
And music is big. It has the group Plaid, right? We asked my buddy Davey Bright, who lives out over by you, and I was like, I'm like, what do you remember of the movie Level Up? And he told us about Neil Maskell, who was Dimitri. He said ask him about Doc Brown and then Plaid, and then one last thing, he was like, ask him about filming on DLR, the Docklands Light Railway. Oh,
fucking hell. Yeah. My God. Well, they're all interesting things.
Yeah.
Level Up was true guerrilla hustle filmmaking. It was like absolutely, we shot in Chinatown, in the center of London, with no permits, with 1,000 people in the background, of which there was, it was just completely just stealing in a way. DLR, we had permission on DLR, but it was like 5 of us, like the DP, who was our camera op and focus filler, and we were literally jumping on the DLR with the actor, and we'd shoot for one stop. We'd all jump off, and then we jump on. I think we did 54 setups that day. It was just absolutely crazy, shooting in shopping centers. It was basically like, it felt like it was like shooting a short film, but it was just longer, and we had a few more resources, but that was really what it was.
That's so great.
And there's like a joy in that, like, not that I necessarily like I'd want to go and do that again, but there is just such a joy and fun in have you seen that film One Cut for the Dead?
Oh, I actually had it on my list. It was one of those movies that was praised, and I would always see it up on Shudder. I heard it's amazing, but I have not gotten a chance to watch it.
Just the thing about that film does is it just expresses the joy of low budget filmmaking.
Yeah.
And the higher your budget goes, and even though it's amazing and you can do such great things, like there's nothing quite like that feeling of just almost like mates scrabbling together to try and to try and make something, you know. And that's sort of what Level Up was, you know. And in a way, like, you know, it's flawed, the story's flawed, but you know, I look back at it so fondly, that film.
Cool. I think what Langan, you had like a music question as far as.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you about the music choices for your films, and you said you were in a band, so I guess music would be a big deal to you. But I love that Rival Consoles track, Looming and iBoy, and me and Sam are huge hip hop fans, so Cannibal Ox, we all about that. And and I noticed you used the artist Ghost Poet a couple of times. Are you very involved in the music that you use in the films? And also, if I could follow up, you know, what was your band like that you were in? What kind of music did you play when you played?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about the films first because it's less embarrassing. So music is massive. It's probably in a way like one of my favorite parts of the process, and you know, and like as much an influence on me wanting to make films as films. You know, just listening to certain types of music and closing your eyes or walking around and just imagining. You know, and that sort of like where it came from, and even like. You know, like Blade Runner is one of my favorite films, but probably like the soundtrack had more of an impact. Yeah, you know,
one of the best.
So Level Up, like there's a record label in the UK called Warp Records, and I just love their stuff. Particularly, you know, it's like Aphex Twin, I guess, is the most famous. So that like electronic era, you know, and Boards of Canada, and there was an act called Plaid who I always loved, and they scored a couple of Japanese films, even though they're UK based. Tekken Kinkri, which is this anime film, which is absolutely incredible, and they did the most amazing score for that. So I really, really wanted them to do it, and they were, you know, they were sort of trepidatious, and then they started to see the rushes come in, and they really liked the look and feel of it, so they came on board. And then through Warp, because they're with Warp, I just it was just, you know, loads of my favorite tracks, you know, and artists, and just being able to use a lot of that stuff because it's not necessarily, you know, hugely popular in a way, so it's not that expensive. Although it was still amazing they gave it all to us. So that, you know, Level Up and iBoy was like complete freedom with music in that way. And ICU, I guess, you know, and so I was completely like every track is what I specifically found often shot like that Rival Consoles. You know, we worked out that whole sequence to that track. You know, basically wrote that sequence to that track. Because it's just such a great track, and
that's what it caused me to look it up because
you know,
it syncs so well with what you were doing on the screen. It just it's perfect.
Yeah, it's such an amazing. He's incredible, and Cannibal Locks, like, you know, Cold Veins, probably my favorite hip hop album of all time. And
are you kidding me? It's so good.
So just
20 years old. 20. It's just like we're from New York, so like I was going to shows watching like them do that, and it just, man, LP before he did Run the Jewels and after he did Company Flow, the production on the Cold Vein is just, wasn't it so futuristic 20 years ago? It still sounds wild, right?
It still sounds amazing. It's unbelievable. He is just incredible. So you know, hugely, ICU was, I guess, slightly different because it's so, I mean, they're all score based, but they all have a lot of tracks like Level Up and iBoy. But ICU is pretty much, you know, barring 2 tracks is score.
Right.
You know, and then you've got the 2 tracks in it, one of which is the track on the vinyl, which kind of plays a number of times for various reasons, and then you've got the, you know, the end credits, the Ghost Poet. So yeah, in terms of what my band was, like, I was really into, you know, it started when I was like 12, right? You know, and like I was really into grunge, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, you know, that stuff. Got quite into like acid jazz in the UK, and increasingly into electronic music. So it was just a sort of disastrous mash of all that stuff. And I was really getting obsessed with movies. So I was trying to write like the Shawshank Redemption of rock sheets, you know, and like just complete. I mean, it was just, and just got really, really stoned and sat pretending we were practicing and playing Mario Kart. And, you know, went to music college for a year. But, you know, the thing about, I think, particularly as a guitarist, is you really have to be very, very good to stand out. You know, I always sort of look back and think, shit, I should have played something simple. I should have been like the bongo player. Like, you know, to be the guitarist, unless you're exceptional, you know, like there's a lot of great guitarists out there. So
Yeah.
finding films, you know, there was a joy that I no longer had to, you know, pretend I was going to be a great guitarist at some point.
But
You ever thought about like scoring, like working on scores for your own stuff in the future, or like are you kind of left music behind a little bit in your?
I mean, I work very closely with the composers,
Right.
but they're, you know, they're just more skilled people
I got you.
at that than I am. You know, I can sort of do that. And, you know, like, especially as the films get bigger, there's just so much. I mean, obviously, look at John Carpenter or someone. I mean, it would be an awesome thing to do. But, I mean, it's like, and, you know, it's interesting because I'm doing a bigger film now, and it's you know, much more with a studio. And so you don't, you know, I couldn't just go off with like a keyboard and just go, I want to do this. Do you know what I mean?
You got enough
There's a lot
to do,
more
probably.
voices. Yeah, exactly.
be right back. Got to go figure out this keyboard part. You guys do your thing.
yeah.
The new movie is called Night Teeth, and it's also going to be distributed by Netflix, as well. iBoy was. So what's it like working with Netflix? Because to two normal jerk offs like me and Brian, that sounds like the coolest thing ever.
Well, we were 6 weeks away from shooting with just the money we had, which was like about 600,000. That's all we were. And then somebody sent the script to Netflix. And this was when, like, before, like, they were really making a lot of originals. They'd never made one out of the US at that point, I don't think. And then we got on the phone and they said they really liked it. And they basically like doubled the budget. And, you know, we were already in prep and they were completely hands off. Really, we weren't even supposed to be a Netflix original by that point. They were just going to distribute it after a theatrical, and then when they saw the dailies or when they saw the first cut, they said they wanted it to be an original, and that was that. So it was just brilliant, and I think so many more people saw the film because it was Netflix. You know, it was a film that's like, you know, commercial, but cannot compete with the Marvel, you know, because it's a superhero film, you know, but would have just been destroyed by those kind of films. And also, like, would never have played the festivals because it's still kind of commercial and young. It kind of sat between, and I think it would have been really hurt by that, you know. You either have to go much more down the festival route and the kind of critical accolades, or your commercial, and it would have sat in the middle. But Netflix, like, especially with that young audience, it just, you know, it just hit. So that was great. So Night Teeth, you know, it has been with Netflix from the get-go. You know, we took the script to them, and then they came on board, and so we developed, you know, continued to develop the script with them. So it's much more of a Netflix show, and it's a bigger budget, so they are more involved. But it's been equally great. You know, I mean, as you say, it's just sort of awesome, really, and they get fully, but well, I don't know about every film, but they've been so sort of fully behind it that, you know, when COVID happened and everything shut down, as I said, like, rather than just trying to get it done, they actually said, like, what do you want to make the film better? Is there anything you'd like to shoot beyond what you were planning? Are there any extra scenes? So we wrote 5 new scenes, you know, and we went and shot them. You know, it was just like, in that way, it's been great. And again, it's like you know, it's a kind of a young film in that it's like, I don't know, 16 to 35 days. So it's like that kind of, and it's loud and it's fun in a way, like, of anything I've made. It's like it's within that level up world a little bit more, I'd say.
And it's like a first time script writer as well, right?
Yeah. Although he's, you know, all of these guys, like, first time made, but they obviously write a lot and have done a lot and have a lot of projects. So I always feel so bad for writers because you look at the IMDb and it looks like, oh, first time, and actually they've written 30 scripts and they're working on huge things. They just can't say any of it, you know.
Yeah. For sure.
But yeah, but Brent, yeah, he's great. We've got a TV thing we're working on. But yeah, it's been great, you know. And we went and I mean, it's all set in LA, but we shot a fair bit of it in New Orleans, which was amazing to do. And
what was it like? I mean, like, because I mean, you were there probably like pandemic, like what are the most ridiculous challenges? I mean, like, I guess everyone has to get tested. Like, COVID is so fucked up, man. Like, it's just it like, for the stuff that we like and the stuff that you make, it's just such a weird thing. So what were like some of the biggest challenges to finish?
I mean, in New Orleans, we, like, obviously like the whole world was starting to become aware. We were just in our crazy bubble. We shot in a nightclub with 400 people and then had a rap party, like the week in which everybody was closing down. Like we had no idea. It was only when people flew over from LA, they were like, I don't think you realize how fucked we were going to be, you know? And we were like, nah, it'd be fine. And then we thought we'd have 2 weeks off in LA and then we'd be back to it, you know, and then 6 months later. So, but when we went back to it, it was just a very different world. Obviously, like, you know, I tested 3 or 4 times a week. It was really specific about who's allowed on set. The actors are brought onto set, they do their thing. And then if the camera has to move, they're then taken away back to their zone while the camera moves. So everything's much slower. So it's sort of less, you know, obviously there's sort of less kind of banter and fun and in that way. But you get used to stuff very quickly. Like if that was just the way it was for the rest of my days, like it's okay. You know, it was still shot some cool stuff. We went big, you know, anyway, and ambitious, and you still have fun. You know, it's just a little bit.
We adapt.
A little bit stranger.
Yeah, we adapt.
Yeah, exactly.
Man. Like humans, we just adapt, and I mean, most of us, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. But when you make a movie, do you always have that feeling of like, I want to watch it in a movie theater?
Yeah, you know, I guess that's, you know, coming up. You know, I'm sure it's really different for generations coming up on this, but yeah, for sure you do, and you want to experience it with people, especially a film that's primarily like fun, and you know, and you just want to see that experience with a group of people. And there's, you know, that theatrical model that we grew up on. Like each film feels special, you know, and has its moment. That sometimes feels a bit lost with streaming, you know, when it can just you don't even necessarily know a film's come out.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a lot to keep track of.
You know what it is? It's like anything with the internet. It's like, you know, it's so much easier to be seen, but it's so much harder to be found, you know? It's just like everyone's there, but it's like you're like, I could make a movie and compete with someone like you who's, you know what I'm saying? Like I was like, all right, hey, listen, I just made a movie about my backyard and I'm competing with like Adam Randall and whoever.
It's a bit wild west. And there's so many services and people like trying to find, all right, which one is it on and stuff. It's definitely new territory.
It is.
But,
I mean, it's like, it's incredible. And like, thank God for it right now, because if there wasn't this and COVID, we'd all be totally fucked. Like, and there's so much being made. And I love that, you know, a lot of it's like, it doesn't matter. Is it 2 hours? Is it 6 hours? Is it 20 hours? Like, it doesn't really matter as long as it's good. So I think all of that's great. You know, I obviously hope, and I'm sure cinema is going to come back in a big way. I mean, it just will, right? We just want to get out. There's only so many things we can do. Yeah. Like, you know, you go to a bar, you go to a restaurant, you go see a film. Like, well, you know what I mean? I think if you get rid of that one, there's going to be a lot less to do. So it's a double-edged sword. It's like Spotify or something, right? It's like, you know, you used to buy an album and you really appreciate that album from start to finish. Now, like, I'm just constantly just listen to a track onto the next 30 things. Yeah. You know, it becomes much more disposable, which is a shame.
I know.
Every Friday I get a fresh list of new things out and I forgot what came out the week before. I'm like,
right. Yeah.
Shout out to my release radar. You know, but yeah, it's the best of both worlds for sure. Like, you can get it. But I miss the movie theaters. I miss going there. I miss getting my popcorn. I miss, you know, exactly, for sure, you know. And I hope I'm sure everything will come back. I would love to watch this stuff. And so, like, any idea as to when Night Teeth would be kind of released?
They're talking about around Halloween. I'm not sure. It could be sooner. It could be end of the summer. It's a little loose right now. It's definitely this year. So we're still just finishing the edit at the moment, but we're pretty close. It's going to be done by early summer.
Okay, cool. I mean, do you have like, you know, the plan is to work with this and then just keep going, right? You're going to find some more source material. Do you have anything in the tank? Maybe like one idea. You don't have to tell us what it is, but do you have this one movie that's been in your head for the last 10 years that one day you're going to make?
A lot of the stuff that, like, source material that I like dreamed of making has now gone. You know, like, I'll tell you, like, you know, like, I always thought I want to make Preacher, I just loved that. I'm going to make Preacher, and then Seth Rogen made it into a TV series.
Oh, it's so
the comic
good.
book, right? I fucking loved it. That was like, that's what I'm going to do. And I was like, my absolute dream is to make Sandman, and then that's now gone. So it's like a lot of the stuff, unfortunately, I love John Constantine and Hellblazer, and then that keeps being made, So there isn't anything sort of like that in the same way. There's a number of projects that I'm talking about right now, that are like sort of dream projects in terms of the genres that they're in, or the settings and that sort of thing, so there's things cooking. You never know which one's going to go and which one's going to happen first.
And now we live in a world of episodic stuff, so you can tell a long form story. I just finished The Head on HBO Max, 6 episodes. Man, what a great fucking show. It was just like, it felt like Knives Out meets The Thing. It's like this murder mystery.
Oh, really?
Oh, it's so good. But it's like you tell it in 6 episodes, which allows somebody like you or like a writer to basically really tell that story. So I love the episodic TV as well.
Sure.
Yeah. And, there is a project that I, just thinking about, that is about a decade old, that is a TV thing that I'm hoping to, that's a sort of combination of supernatural and a kind of sprawling gangster show. So hopefully.
Cool. Yeah.
Hopefully that,
Thank you for taking time to talk to our little show. We're big.
Absolutely.
We're big pop culture. We're big music, movies. Like we like to talk to people about this stuff. And you were super cool, for giving us your time.
So thanks so much. And thanks for supporting the film.
Yeah. Word of mouth, man. That's what we got. And we like to push it out there. And I don't know, is there anything else you want to say or?
I mean, just if you haven't seen ICU, please check it out. It's a film that is only really through word of mouth anybody seen it. It sort of just quietly came onto various streaming services, and it's through people like you who are recommending it that anybody's getting to see it.
Please watch it so then I could talk about it. I feel like I can't even talk about it.
Yeah, you gotta be very careful.
Yeah, I can't describe it. It's like, all right, you got to watch this movie. Why? It's like, it's just really good. It's got a great script and a twist. And so, Adam, thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Great chatting, guys.
All right. Open door.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.